Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to whatever time zone you are in. Welcome to vBrownBag, the weekly video podcast on IT topics where we bring you experts in the wide world of technology to talk about things that get them excited and their favorite topics. Kind of like a show and tell for tech geeks that want to learn something new. Tonight, we are getting back to our roots. We are getting back into VMware. We're going to talk about the NSX 4.1 platform architecture. And we've got the best person on the planet to do it, Mr. Britton Johnson. Hey, Mr. Britton Johnson, how you been?
I'm doing all right, Chris. How are you?
That was so energetic. Well done. Jeez.
You know, it's been a long day.
I'm okay. Thanks. It's like you're Eeyore and I'm Tigger.
I've often been accused of being Eeyore, so I'm okay with that. I like Eeyore. Eeyore's a realist.
All right.
Hey, I'm great, Chris. How are you?
Oh, shut up. Just shut up. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. Get in on the conversation. If you are on Twitter, then if you at vBrownBag, I will be paying attention to Q&A questions that you pose there. Or if you hashtag vBrownBag, I'll also be paying attention to that. If you want to follow Britton on Twitter, I suggest you do. He is the jealously guarded handle of VCIXNV. For those of you that aren't VMware certified, that is a highly coveted acronym right there. And I am, of course, Mistwire. Do not follow me. I have nothing good to say on Twitter, ever.
That's not true.
It's cat pictures and a shot of the new Mac. That's about it. That's all I got.
Everybody needs to relax once in a while. You're like the chill for the tech internet.
Oh. I'm the dad joke of the internet. Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing. All right.
So I'm leaving this disclaimer slide up. There's really nothing in this presentation that is, undeveloped or futures or anything like that. But I always like to leave this up as, career protection. So. All right. So welcome everyone to 2023. And this is my third foray into producing an NSX series for all of the wonderful folks of the vBrownBag community. Started out doing this in the long ago times in 2020.
In the before times.
The before times, yes. Actually was in the midst of COVID times. Because we were all locked at home, we had nothing better to do. So I thought, well, hey, let's do a whole bunch of vBrownBags.
Let's make a lot of content on NSX.
Yeah. And right about that same time that we started that, I ended up moving too. So I had to cross state lines and stuff. So while everybody else was locked at home, Chris, and learning how to make sourdough bread, I was moving. So I didn't get to stay home and learn things.
I actually did learn sourdough bread. Thank you very much.
So this is our third year doing this. I skipped last year because I was too busy. And so this year, now we're getting into the long tail releases of NSX. First thing I want to highlight, and I'm pausing on this opening slide for a reason. The thing you should notice right off the bat, we dropped the T. So as of the 4.x release train for NSX, we no longer call it NSXT. When you go to download it in the product matrix of things, when you're looking for NSX, if you own NSX, don't look for NSXT anymore because you generally won't be there. It's just now we're back now to just calling it NSX. So thank you, marketing team, for making that change.
Are you saying that sarcastically or genuinely?
No, I think it's good. Personally,
because the NSXV is no longer a thing at all.
Correct. Yeah. So we only have one product train to talk about now until NSX Cloud stuff, or NSX Plus or whatever they're going to call that, gets fully GA'd. So then
vRealize NSX.
No, even vRealize is gone. It's now ARIA. So yeah, it's just as wait 6 minutes, it'll change. Who am I? My name is Britton Johnson. I'm a staff solutions engineer for VMware. I'm in the Indianapolis, Indiana area in the United States, by way of Wisconsin, hence my conversation with Bucky Badger. And I'm a V expert. Chris mentioned I'm on the Twitters. I don't do a whole lot of tweeting. I mostly just see what Chris has to say and
you're lurking.
Go on about my day.
You're a lurker.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so here's sort of our high-level view agenda for what I was trying to do for this series. We're going to start with a little bit of recap on some core architecture for NSX. We'll kind of look at the things that have not changed really since the 2.x releases to today. There has been quite a bit of change in the core functionality within NSX itself, but nothing really like super earth-shattering. And so I want to try to just review a little bit, and then I'm going to go through a little bit of a demo of NSX plugged into vSphere directly, and then we'll talk about some of the stuff that's coming in 4.1. So for the next 3 weeks after that, we're going to talk about where we sit with software-defined networking and edge services. The week after that, we're going to get into the security and advanced threat prevention. That one's probably going to be a little bit extra long because there's a ton of stuff in there. And I have a pre-recorded demo that I voice-overed. And so I'm going to I actually need to redo it. So I'm going to try to include that in there. It's like an 8-minute demo, and it's really, really in-depth. So the security one, if you're interested in all the security stuff, because really that's why NSX is a thing, is because of security. Try to bookmark your attention on the third week in this series, because I think that's going to be the one that most people are going to be interested in. Lastly, we have this new plugin set of services called the NSX Application Platform, affectionately known as NAP. And the NAP platform is the Kubernetes containered plugin that all of these security services and things runs on top of. And we have an automated way to deploy that. And cross my fingers and dot my I's, I'm going to try to have a working, functional, automated deployment working for this last part of the series. Because this is sort of the holy grail of what we're looking for right now, is getting the end-to-end deployment of this containerized Kubernetes instance fully up and running in my lab and in customer labs all over the place. So it's no small feat, but I think we'll get there. So that is the full series agenda, including what we're talking about today. Any questions right off the bat, Chris?
Nothing as of yet. Looks good.
All right. Whenever I need to take a break and breathe or take a drink of water, I'm going to ask you if there's questions. So
you can pause. There's such thing as a pregnant pause, a graceful silence. We can work with this. It's not the notes you play, Britton. It's the notes you don't play.
Perfect. All right. I always try to include learning resources in any of these. The NSX Tech Zone is still a very good thing. Other thing that we've just kind of rejiggered and doubled down on is this thing called NSX Ninja. If you are an NSX customer today and you want to know the latest, greatest of how everything works in NSX, and it's it gets some basically free NSX training. Reach out to your VMware account team and ask about getting into NSX Ninja. It's a tough program to get into because there is a time commitment for it. You have to kind of, be able to commit to the time of doing it. It's at least a week, if not more than that, depending upon the tracks that you go through. But NSX Ninja is something that we've run internally for customers for a number of years now, and it's just grown in popularity. So if you are an NSX customer, again, look into that because it's really good training and content. It's kind of like a consolidated, boiled down of all of our paid education classes, like the NSX Install, Configure, Manage class that's listed here. Same kind of idea, but we include way more into the Ninja. It's really a 1 week boot camp of everything NSX. So, and then otherwise, of course, there's always the full-on paid NSX install class. There's a design class. There's an advanced troubleshooting class. There's a security class. There's 5 or 6 different NSX focused offerings for training now. So no shortage of training. Exam prep. as Chris mentioned, I'm in the VCIX and V camp. I re-upped my VCIX by passing a VCAP exam back in 2021. So I'm actually a VCIX in V and in T. Biggest thing I can tell people looking to do exam prep is go get the blueprint for said exam, because it changes every time that they do a revision on the exam. And also, it is something that you don't want to be over studying in the wrong areas, because you could spend way too much time learning something that's not on the exam. So call me Captain Obvious, but this is something everybody should be paying attention to. All right, let's get into the meat of this. So why is NSX a thing, and where are we kind of going with this stuff? From my perspective, so where I sit within VMware, I'm covering healthcare customers. And for the vast majority of my customer base, it's healthcare providers. So people on the front lines, saving lives, keeping people alive, help children's hospitals, the whole gamut. And so I see and have conversations about security and organizational breaches and all kinds of different things that happen, all the time. And these sets of statistics, while scary, are 100% real. And, every year they get worse. Probably the biggest, one of the more interesting points on this particular thing is we've had, hundreds of billions of dollars in security spend, just in the last 5 years. And every year we spend more on security services and security protection from all vendors. This is just not VMware. This is everybody. And yet the total damages for, cyber incidences and ransomware and everything just keeps going up. And it generally keeps doubling every year, year over year. So, these cyber, criminals and cyber hacking organizations are well funded. They have ready-made ransomware kits where they don't even need to necessarily have extensive knowledge to go about and do an attack on somebody. They just have to have the time and the wherewithal, and they want to go do it. So, this is why we've taken a much tighter focus on security and almost kind of let some of the data center-y, networky things, keep on persisting and keep on expanding into the product line. But our focus as a whole, it really is in the security space, because things just keep changing. The biggest piece of this on this is we publish internally and externally, publicly now, an annual threat landscape report. If you look up the VMware Threat Landscape Report, our security team of threat analysis experts in our threat analysis unit publish this report annually, and it goes broadly across the industry, talking about specific attacks that we've seen and how has affected people. If you're a person of a security mindset and you want to understand kind of what's happening from a security perspective on the network side, it's interesting reading. If you're, not, it might help you sleep, but that just depends on what you're interested in learning. The persistence angle is interesting because one of our executives at the RSA conference last year shared this image, and I couldn't find it. I really wanted to find it for this presentation. He's like, imagine if you had somebody break into your house, and instead of kicking them out right away, you just had them them sitting on the couch watching a movie with you and your family. And, that's kind of what happens. Like, you may not even be aware that the person is there, but they're sitting there eating popcorn with your kids. That's the persistence of somebody who's, infiltrated your environment, and now they're learning about how you do things. It's a creepy image, but this is the legitimate threat that we see across organizations today. And the persistence and the dwell time just gets longer and longer and longer and longer. I think back on the services going back several years now, but when Sony was hacked, there was some statistic that came out that they had been inside of Sony's network for upwards of 90 days before they got detected. And so all of this stuff happens, and the longer somebody sits in your environment, the more damage they can do. Hence the reason Sony's entire network basically just got flushed, because they had access to everything. So these are why, I have stayed so tightly aligned to this product. This is why my whole online brand has been about NSX and messaging for it, because we need tools and we need things to help customers and help organizations, healthcare or beyond, or just general business, try to work around these threats. As NSX has grown over the years, we've come from just a singular data center set into this sort of ecosystem of products. So we have, the NSX data center, we had, which really is just, NSX in a nutshell. So we used to actually call the product NSX data center, but it's really just NSX across the board for this now. NSX Cloud is a piece that is sliding away and going to be converted into something else in the future. So that's kind of a watch this space. We have different public cloud offerings and things right now, but the NSX Cloud piece is something where, I would say pay attention later this year at the VM Explorer, and we'll have more things happening there. But in general, we do still have the legacy NSX Cloud offering available for customers who need it in certain environments, but we're moving and shifting our strategy away from the old NSX Cloud offering to a new offering that is in the works. NSX Intelligence is part of this network NSX application platform that we'll talk about in the coming weeks. And that's kind of one of the new ways that we do security modeling and recommendations and insight generally into your data center networks, so that you can build security policy and know what it looks like, when you're about to do these things. It's very, it's akin to, Network Insight, affectionately known as Verni. But Verni is still its own product, and it is still massively successful, and still helps tens of thousands of customers understand, who their applications are talking to, where they're communicating with, what goes together. And it's now part of the VMware Aria suite. It's VMware Aria for networks, and so it's we still call it Verni for those of us who've been around long enough, but it does actually technically have a new name. Those are the big pieces in where we're sitting today, but NSX is still for sure, the core offering when we talk about NSX and the things that I'm covering today is really just talking about the data center suite and things that are happening in that area. Okay, so I updated this. This is a slide that I did for the first series, and I kind of tried to massage it and update things and bring it into today's picture of what NSX looks like. In general, a lot of the core capabilities of what we had in NSX for the, 2 years ago version, the 2.4, 2.5 to today, has stayed very similar and the same, with nuanced changes, some things we've pulled out, some things we've put in. But the core functionalities with the way the managers are deployed and all that kind of stuff, still very much the same. We're still, doing policy-driven configuration. We have true multi-site with federation available now for customers. That was something that I don't think we really even had production ready yet back in 2021. So I'll go a little bit deeper into the federation in a minute here. Still lots of integration with containers, some integration with bare metal, and the other thing about this is the VMC on X. So VMC in AWS, the Azure VMware Suite, Google Cloud VMware Engine, Basically, any of the VMC services where it's VMware Cloud on a cloud provider, all of those are, inclusive of and wholly connected by NSX. And it's kind of key to the success for customers to use those platforms because, not only are you getting a, software-defined networking platform inside of a cloud provider, you're also getting all of the extra security services that NSX brings on top of that. So this is where we've ended up building. The development team has done amazing work on this product over the years. They continue to, and they've built sort of one product that fits, oh my gosh, something like 20 or 25 separate use cases now. So it's quite vast in its application. And I've not seen much else like it from a networking standpoint, where you've got one product set that feeds so many other specific dedicated product sets, like, VMware Cloud Foundation and all that stuff. On the services side, we're getting into a separate release of the firewall product called the Gateway Firewall. This is more of a standalone appliance for north-south gateway traffic into and out of a specific data center pod. The first question that usually comes up when we talk about Gateway Firewall is, can I replace my big giant piece of physical iron firewall at the edge? The official answer as of today is not yet. We're getting very close to that. But and we want to make sure that all of our security services and that all of our things are fully up to matching all of the competitors and where we're at with today. So Gateway Firewall north-south traffic is really for us sort of a between data centers north-south. So not out to the internet edge per se, but you've got data center A in Chicago, data center B in Dallas, and you need something to sit on a connection between those and mitigate, internal security risks between those internal data center connections. That's where the Gateway Firewall sits. So that's kind of the 2 cents on that. Distributed firewall still, same and greatest and best as it ever was. Individual firewalls applied at the VNIC level, as close to the workload as possible without changing it. No agents. It really is just our unfair advantage in the industry of where we apply security. So we will continue to develop and support and make that the best firewall in the industry in terms of data center. Talked about NSX intelligence a little bit. NSX network detection response. We'll get more into that into the NAPS parts of this later. On the networking side, VDS support. VDS, we initially started this with if you recall, the NVDS. The NVDS is now fully deprecated in 4.1. So anybody who's converting over from older versions, if you haven't already started to deprecate the NVDS in your environment, you're going to have to do that really fast, because it's not going to be there in future releases. I think even in the early through 3.2 releases, we started removing support for the NVDS on VMware hypervisors. We still use it on some of the other hypervisors, but generally speaking, most customers who deploy this are doing it on a VMware hypervisor. Other big change, we support OSPF dynamic routing now, so it's not just BGP anymore. So that's where we sit with that. Click a minute here. Most of this is very much still the same as well. Lots of API access across the range for all things. Tag-based security grouping is still a big-time strategy for our customers. The way I communicate tag-based security grouping is around creating security policy for objects that may or may not exist in your environment yet. It's kind of a way to build the house and have the lights turn on before you even move in. So that's a specific talk track and strategy that I need still a lot of education on. it's something that adds customers who do NSX at scale do it extremely well. I know I've seen several in years past VMworld and VM Explore sessions around it. And so if you're looking for information and content about it, definitely call back to those free sessions from VMworld and VM Explore on tag-based security. Now, on the operations side, this is probably where we've done the most changes in the last few releases. There's just been a ton of time working on getting started wizards built in, making the product easier, getting it down to where you don't have to have somebody with a full-on range of networking certifications and understanding of how to do things. Trying to build it kind of in this cloud-first mindset where you can, have a base knowledge of how things work and connect to each other, but we'll guide you through and get you set up, and get you where you need to go. Still all quiet, Chris?
All quiet on the Western Front.
All right.
This is good stuff, though.
I didn't see that movie. So.
Honestly, I haven't either.
All right. So here's kind of the things that, again, changed but didn't all at the same time. So our management and control plane, still very much in the NSX Manager cluster. These are deployed in groups of 3 appliances. The biggest change is we've got this vCenter plugin back, and I'm going to show you a little bit of an automatic demo that I've got set up for this, where we can kind of walk through some of those things. But otherwise, the core components of what make NSX operational and easy to use for customers, and even if you're learning this stuff, like, yes, you can still go back to those the 2021 and the 2020 vBrownBag series and go through a lot of the components in architecture from that series. It still applies today. The NSX Manager, however, while we still have this converged appliance, we still have the policy structures and the things that make it the full management plane of the environment. It's kind of even been turned up a little bit. So, the desired state of what you're trying to do in the environment still comes from the NSX Manager. We have different sizes for different deployment scenarios. The policy role is doing, centralized location for configuring of network and security across the whole environment. The controller maintains the realized state of the system and configures the data plane itself. But, what we're really getting towards here is now, instead of having just these one single cluster of NSX managers to manage your environment, for customers who want to do this, at scale across multiple environments, we have NSX Federation. And I probably could have added a 5th week and just done a Federation overview, because it would require almost that much time to really get into the details of it. But in general, here's sort of the Cliff Notes version of what Federation looks like today. We deploy your typical local manager cluster like you would. And so that's your 3 NSX managers for one site. So we've got, site number 1 at Paris on this slide. And then we have other data center sites and other physical locations that we want to have some unified policy and unified architecture spread across and managed somewhat independently, but also somewhat globally. So to do that, we have the other NSX Manager clusters in the other sites. So site 2, site 3. And in this, then, in order to manage each of these entities as a global unit, we will stand up a global manager cluster, active and a standby. So that's a total of now 6 additional NSX Manager clusters to operate this whole multi-site environment. So overhead is high. This is the con listed here. It's a large footprint. This is not for a small customer. And, we have scale limitations in terms of size, but the pros here for customers who are, in this boat where they need to manage and maintain state across multiple sites and have security policies be replicated across sites, to have networks be stretched across sites, to have, IDS policies available across sites, all of these kinds of things. This is where, and if you want, a singular API interface across the entire global infrastructure, this is where federation comes into play, because now we can, push information and do things, exclusively from the NSX Manager UI and say, okay, we've got, a new application coming that's going to be a global application. It's going to be pushed out to all sites. Instead of creating, firewall policy, just here in site one, you're creating it up here in the GM, and the GM then pushes it down to all 3 sites. And so the policy it centralizes the policy management for your workloads, and it centralizes kind of the ease of management of how you maintain a large, physical NSX infrastructure in your environment. That is kind of the nutshell services of where we're at with NSX on a federation site or federated environment. I wanted to show something here, but I don't have the right screen up. Bear with me for 2 seconds here. Okay, so this is an NSX 4.1 Manager UI, and where you would interact with multiple sites in this drop-down we have on the top. I don't have this set up in a federated environment because it's too deep for my lab at the moment, and I could get one spun up in the VMware lab, but I haven't had the ability to do that yet. But it does work in our lab. So if I do some more other federation stuff, I'll have a working demo showing where I can show how that works. But basically, you choose your sites in this main drop down, and you can drop from the GM down specifically into a specific local manager set, so you can work independently within a certain local manager, or you can work globally at the higher level of what the GM does. So it's, again, trying to create sort of functional user capabilities so customers can do more things, with what they have. In terms of how we apply security, I just want to quickly go over this. I know I'm already like 30 minutes in, which is amazing. I'm always amazed how fast this goes, Chris. I feel like I'm not saying anything, but yeah, it's been half an hour already.
We're doing great. Keep on rock and rolling.
NSX security. So where we sit, again, well, the thing we like to harp about is this space in the firewall, and this is a set of that we built a while back, kind of to show where we do things. Like a lot of other vendors will do agent-based or host-based firewalling, where they stick an agent inside the workload. And it's, depending upon the workload, you may or may not be able to do that. A lot of times the scaling of those is difficult. And then the other interesting thing on agents inside of a workload is the vast majority of cyber attackers who, when they compromise, one of these precious workloads, the first thing they do once they, get inside of a workload is they run a command to do whatever they can to disable any agents that are running security services inside your workload. So if you have a security service running as an agent, and it gets compromised, it's immediately a threat, because all they're going to do is try to disable with known tactics, your security in the environment. And so that's where, having something that sits, at a different layer is good because, and a lot of people do that at the network level, but obviously there's still issues with that because, you can block off, a VM with a policy from being able to connect to some other machine. But if this guy's compromised, he can still spread laterally through every other workload that's connected to that same network or that same host. Which is again why we spend so much time talking about, our position in the hypervisor, where we sit on the distributed firewall, and the ability now to not just apply firewall rules at this level, but also doing, intrusion prevention and detection in layer 7 app ID rules, and doing them, without network changes or even overlay networks required if you don't want them. So, trying to do our best to apply security as close to the thing as possible and doing it in the simplest way possible. All right, I'm going to skip ahead here a bit. All right. So this is the thing that I've been pretty excited for because one of the things that I missed from the NSX for vSphere days was the ease of which a vSphere admin could get to the NSX interface by just doing it right inside of vCenter. We've been missing that for a while. It came back in early releases of the 3.2, I believe, is when we first started really making it a real connection. It might have been earlier than that. There's so many changes happening, it just boggles my mind sometimes. But in general, this is a thing that I'm really excited to see back in the environment. I'm going to skip ahead to the point where we actually start to enable this here. So now with 4.1 and even some of the 3.2 releases, we can go straight to the NSX dropdown inside of the vSphere client. So we're in a vCenter, and we can, select our embedded NSX manager appliance. And this is the fastest deployment of an NSX appliance you'll ever see because we've sped it up. And it's really just deploying an OVA, just like everything else you would do in vCenter. And there it goes. And then the NSX wizard starts the onboarding of NSX in your environment. We install a license key from here. And then we'll immediately bring you into some quick getting started guides. On how to do, out the gates a vCenter plugin. So he's in the demo, he's going to create this infrastructure group and just kind of get started with some basic infrastructure policies. So defining the DHCP service and building that off of a set of tags. And then just doing a DNS service by IP address. And then creating some additional service group, local service groups for some other infra service. And really just walking through, the creation of this is something every environment has, is just core infrastructure stuff. So, they're going to create, core infrastructure groups, core environment stuff. So this is kind of the basics of your, prod environment for what a development group works on. And then setting up even a PCI architecture infrastructure, and then setting up an application architecture infrastructure. All of this, is done just within really a few clicks and some wizards from within the vCenter UI itself. I know this is going really fast and it's impossible to look at, so I'm not going to make everybody watch this whole thing, but I wanted to at least get through the gist of the idea of you don't have to do, dedicated NSX management stuff anymore. So if you're not of the mindset of somebody who wants to, manage a dedicated NSX infrastructure, or even deal if you're just a vSphere, not just a vSphere admin, but if you're more comfortable as a vSphere admin, you're not a network admin.
If you're just a vSphere admin, then you can play too, kids. Oh, here's a sandbox. Wow.
Yeah, no, that came off as slightly derogatory, and I did not mean to.
I loved it. I don't know what you're talking about. That's amazing. No, I think it's nice that you can actually play with it outside of just being like a straight up networking admin as well.
Yeah, and it's really like it's very cool in how we've just like I'm in one of our demo environments. I'm in a vCenter, and so I'm just looking at the NSX manager environment, directly inside of vCenter. Yeah. And so I don't have to. I still can. Shoot. All right. Am I back?
You are back. Yes. You fuzzed for 1 second.
All right.
I wasn't sure if it was me or if it was you, so I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, it was probably me. I've got redundant internet now, so if my internet totally dies, it'll switch over.
Did you pull the plug on the router again?
They turn it off and turn it on again. Yeah. So anyway, at any rate, but yes, if you want to go through and log into the NSX UI, you can still do it both ways.
Is he doing this on purpose now?
But if you're come on back.
Are you doing this on purpose now? Are you messing with me?
What's going on? No, I have no idea what's happening. Messed up. I'm on my old Mac it's something's going haywire here.
Well, I noticed that you're plugged in, but the battery's dead or something when you open the top.
Oh yeah. I see that now. Well, I was charging my iPad, and so maybe that I just unplugged the iPad, so maybe that's screwing it up. So,
no lo sé.
Yeah. All right. At any rate, we've got a few minutes left here. Let me get into the real stuff here. All right. NSX 4.1. So as I've kind of noted somewhat throughout this, glitches aside with my computer, the NSX as a product has kind of got into this new maturity cycle where we're not necessarily trying to boil the ocean with a whole sea of new features and functionality anymore. We're kind of getting to this point now where it's a mature product, and we're adding in the stuff that people have been asking for a long time, and we're making it more stable and something that customers can sit and rely on for years and years and years. We're trying to make it that long tail networking product that people have known and loved from the NSX for vSphere days, because once NSX for vSphere hit kind of that 6.4 release train, people really gravitated to it and liked sitting on that, and liked treating it like a network appliance where you just upgrade it once in a while when you have to because of a bug or because of log4j. But otherwise, we're getting to this maturity in the product now where we're adding things, but we're not trying to just completely change the world in terms of rewriting the whole product again. We're making this a good long-term product that customers can trust. Part of this is some of these themes. And so this is one of the more interesting things we added in 4.1 is this thing called sub-transport node profiles. So a transport node profile, if you recall, is kind of a configuration template or guide that gets applied at the host level for every single host that gets prepared for NSX. So it's what sets up the mapping for your uplinks to your VDS connections. So your physical PNIC uplinks to your VDS connections. It sets up the VDS switch connections. It basically is sort of the underpinning plumbing of how the hosts operate inside of your NSX. And, we set up different transport zones inside of these things, and we set up uplink profiles to build all these things and connect them all together. This initial offering of setting up a compute cluster transport node profile more or less made this one big decision for the hosts that customers were deploying, especially across racks. And, so what happens is we've got this monolithic configuration to a cluster, but a cluster may not necessarily live in one physical space. So we've had customers say, well, I've got hosts split across 2 racks, and our rack design policies say that everything in its own rack has to have its own IP space. And so we need a way to apply multiple transport node configurations across hosts in a given space and make them singularly manageable from NSX. And so that's kind of where this sub-TNP policy comes into play. Started back in 3.2.2, so it's not even exclusively a 4.1 thing, but this is kind of where we're highlighting it at this point. So the sub-transport node profiles sit within the transport node profile and override the transport node profile for specific hosts inside of a specific cluster. So, let me get over this here. So say you have a specific cluster in a rack that has a specific IP policy set that needs to have TEPs on a given IP range in one rack, and you've got TEPs on a specific IP range in another VLAN on another rack. And you want to apply those from the same NSX manager, from the same policies, and have them, be able to just, mesh up their connectivity for the networking requirements, all inside of one policy. This is where the sub-TNPs come in play. It allows you to uniformly apply this across a given compute cluster, even if it's separated into these sub-racks. So when you go to apply this, it just allows more flexibility for customers in how they turn on and consume NSX from the beginning, because the transport nodes are one of the first things you apply when you turn on NSX in the environment. So this is, it's kind of a small change, but it's something that for certain environments, I think we've had customers clamoring for this for a while. And again, the big typical use case here is stretch clusters, the layer 3 topologies, things where TEPs aren't in the same subnet as we highlight here. We see this quite a bit where, we would have, in prior times, we would have had to set up multiple different transport node profiles for those different areas, and now we can have them all encased in one profile. Enter VRF routing. So, cards on the table, I am not like a dyed-in-the-wool network geek head where I can understand all of the things of routing and BGP and all these wonderful things. The idea of a VRF, I get it, but I know there's it's one of these ways of there's 6 ways to skin to slice this onion. How many different ways could we possibly come up with? So but I know there are use cases for a VRF or a VRF. This virtual forwarding, routing and forwarding construct within networks. I know it's very popular and probably controversial all at the same time. What we've done with this, though, is we've tried to, in our first iteration of VRF routing, we had kind of this interesting way of doing this. This is the legacy model. Anytime we had somebody stand up a VRF, if somebody needed to get between VRFs in an NSX environment, we had to do this kind of Herculean effort to get there by standing up a static route to this particular subnet on another tier 1. And for those following at home, if you recall, these subnets between the tier 0 and the tier 1, these are auto-plumbed networks done by the NSX manager when these things are created. So these are not networks or subnets that are managed typically by any customer or anything. So if you wanted to get from point A to point B and understand how that gets there, you've had to set up a specific static route to that specific VRF plumbed gateway internet address or IP address to where you're trying to get to. So difficult to set up. Couldn't do any additional services to it. Really no control over the traffic exchange because these are auto-plumbed networks. You can't, if something moves, you couldn't necessarily have traffic proximity route and do things based on location because this space is sort of a no man's land. So this just created some interesting challenges for customers and how to deal with inter-VRF routing. So to address this, we've come up with this clean model for communicating between VRFs. So first of all, you'll notice we've simplified the structure where there's not tier 1s underneath these environments. We've got just a straight tier 0 to a VRF connection. And we're standing up this additional segment piece called the inter-VRF transit segment. So each VRF gets this inter-VRF interface on the segment, shows in the UI. You enable it in the UI and give it what you need. We will automatically allocate IPs for it and do the auto plumbing like we did for the tier 1s to the tier 0, but it can optionally be set explicitly by you. And you can then just designate in each VRF, where you want this traffic to go. So it really just kind of puts, again, a simplified stance on how we do this device routing between a tier 0 and a VRF, or between a VRF and a VRF, and just giving customers more flexibility in how these things communicate without trying to do too much work on this. It just kind of lets somebody say, like, I want this VRF to talk to this tier 0, and just you indicate it in the UI. NSX takes care of the rest of it, and it will stand up the routes inside of each end of it automatically. And we will, make these things just kind of happen, it's always nice when software does that for you. And then, you then will get, some control over the connectivity of what's exchanged between the two interfaces. So, one route gets defined on one side and is added to the VRF on the other side, and vice versa. So they will fully, understand and exchange communication paths between both sides so that things can run smoothly and give you, again, that flexibility of, how you manage and mitigate the traffic in your network. Something that, again, a lot of customers who have, multi-tenant network setups where things are really have to be very uniquely deployed. This is where this comes into play. I think I saw a question pop up there from Graham.
Yeah, he was asking if does BGP routing support VRF routing?
Yeah, BGP is supported across the basically everywhere in this environment. So I think even in this environment, it's not specifically on this UI. I'm trying to look at this box here. But yeah, we can do dynamic routing through this. And then again, that's kind of how we do the automatic exchange of routes between things is through BGP. Basically, we'll just automatically discover things through BGP, and then we'll have BGP from the VRF, right there to your top of rack. So So the BGP to route between VRF instances, it's not explicitly stated that it's BGP that's happening between the VRF instances because it's just happening in the background. We're utilizing BGP to do everything else, and so it's maintaining the state of everything. I don't know that it's a BGP that you can manage inside of this inter-VRF network. That is a thing that I would have to look more into, Graham. Question, can I use NSX BGP to route to my Cisco VRF instance? I believe so. Don't quote me on that, though. But again, this is all brand new stuff, even to me. Because yes, the VRFs do communicate with other VRFs outside of NSX. Yes, as long as they have a route, a local AS path to get there. As long as they're within range of each other, they know where each other is. They can communicate. Is my understanding. All right. What, like 5 minutes left, Chris?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. I'm going to quickly run through this because I think this is one of the next more interesting things that is specifically available in 4.1. We've always done NSX as a multi-tenant solution, but we're kind of turning it up to 11 a little bit with the 4.1 release and how we handle multi-tenant solutions. So, we've always done multi-tenant before in isolation by just, distributed firewalling or specific network segmentation or standing up a T1 or a VRF per tenant, that kind of thing. What we haven't had is the ability to do multi-tenant capability from a user perspective, where if, say, I am an NSX enterprise admin and I have some other people on my team who manage specific environments that, I want them to manage, a specific tenant or a specific set of tenants for certain applications, but I don't want them to have enterprise-wide access to the whole enchilada. So that's where this concept of NSX projects comes in. This initially was available in the 3.2 releases, but it was only available via API. In 4.1, we're making it fully available in the UI. So the idea here is an NSX project, as it states here, represents this logical container of network and security resources that can be managed by a given set of users. So I'm the NSX enterprise admin. I have somebody who's managing project number 1. I'll create a specific NSX admin user that is tied to project number 1. And that NSX admin, when he goes in or she goes in to create things for that environment, they can create, a VRF, they can create firewall policies, they can create segments, they can create IDS policies on a thing, they can, set up logging, they can do networking, they can do anything they want, and everything that they create, all the construction things that they do, are only applied to the specific environment that they have access to inside the NSX Manager UI. So it's really kind of putting the screws down to say, these are the things you can work on and no more. And that way it kind of takes away this anxiety of, if you will, somebody coming in and, unplugging DNS by a firewall rule from the entire environment. And all of a sudden everything comes to a screeching halt. This way, this project admin team only gets access to stuff that operates their specific application set. And it's, I think for customers who do multi-tenancy, I think this is going to be a very, very powerful thing because of a couple of reasons, really. I think one of the ways that I see customers utilizing this, as I talked about it back in the beginning of this, where we talked about NSX Federation a little bit. So, we have certain deployments where you've got, just these groups of, clusters of NSX managers. And, maybe you want to do that you know, times like 6 different clusters or 6 different, data center pods, if you will, if you're a multi-tenant provider. And, you've got enough hosts in there that could technically be managed by one set of NSX managers. Like if you're not hitting the scale limits of the NSX managers, but you don't want to necessarily spread that and management footprint and have a dedicated set of 3 NSX managers for every single, pod of clusters of hosts. You could kind of shrink down your NSX manager footprint a little bit instead of having, 12, NSX managers. If it fits the requirements, you could shrink it down to maybe, a handful of that go to as comfortable as you are, sized NSX managers, and, size them down, and then use this project's capability to segment out the management of the environment through your handling of how you manage these things. So it can make the management footprint of NSX smaller, but yet the blast radius of what it can contain and what it can manage gets way bigger. And the caveat there is, of course, is the blast radius of a potential problem could also get bigger, because now instead of having just one small set of hosts out of an NSX manager, if you have an NSX manager outage, there's considerations there. But depending upon how, you are with things, if you want to have a smaller management environment, but yet still be restricting in how you apply that, that's where this project thing can I think be a benefit for organizations. We specifically call out customers who do firewall as a service or things like that, things that would be done, through cloud hosting providers who, stand up specific instances for customers. So I think I was going to say that would be, I would think that would be like the primary use case is PaaS cloud hosting providers that are trying to offload some of the network load of their tenants who also have like network people that are running workloads within an environment.
Yeah, and we got a few different core use cases with this where, if you want to stand up, networking as a service with it, there's, ways to build in a boundary with that. And, if you're doing, firewall as a service, you still have to have the main catch here is this one, it does not work for VLAN-backed networks today. And we're not sure about the future on that one yet either. So, if you are a multi-tenant provider, you're going to have NSX overlay network stood up. You're going to have 2 zeros and VRFs and all the things required. But, if you want this kind of cordoned off access to manage the environment, this is probably one of the most, I think, powerful additions inside of the UI. In the 4.1 release is this ability to build out, specific administrative, controls around, what's in the environment. I had another little demo on this thing, but this is, a little bit on the long side, but in general, it just kind of quickly shows, what it looks like when you drop into a project. And, in the UI, you see the different projects and how even from, you can say like, yeah, these are the specific nodes you have access to. Skip it. So you assign just the, local users, or if you have, LDAP users, or however your user, however your user infrastructure is set up in the NSX environment, you can pick those users and manage, assign them to projects within the environment. And then, whatever, project they get assigned to is what they get access to. And that it really does just, turn down, how much they can do and do it within a way that helps, streamline, what they see in terms of access to the environment. So so this guy's now on project 3. So he's only got even a limited set of things that show up in the networking pane. You can go ahead and create a tier 1 gateway, and connect it into the existing upstream provider tier 0. So they can do all the routing features and things. It's just all of it's there, but it's only affecting this specific subset of the environment. So I think it's something that we're going to see a lot of the larger host providers take advantage of as they move into this, and kind of a space for all of our multi-cloud organizations to grow into, and hopefully make their lives a little bit easier.
Nice.
That was not nearly enough because I've got tons more that I could talk about, but I think I'm talked out for the night.
I think that's a good first effort to continue on with the series. We've got 3 more of these, so pace yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit of a preview. More we got stuff in containers and DPUs, with aka SmartNICs. I'll try to touch on some of that stuff, but again, most of this there's just too much to get too deep into it in an hour. I'm just trying to kind of get people piqued and interested in what's happening with NSX.
Yep.
Because as a data center product, it's not going away. Especially with all the advent of cloud stuff. And, it just keeps, getting better with age, just like you and I, Chris.
You, maybe. Oh, was that my bursitis? Was that, I didn't even know I had a lumbago. Oh, my lumbago. Nice. All right. And as Graham said, and you can come back for an extra week if you need more time. We can, if however much information you got to dump, we are
well, and all of this stuff, like part of the reason I do this is because I'm still ramping up my knowledge set on all these new stuff within 4.1. So this is one of the first goes I've had to kind of talk about some of the stuff at 4.1. So if I seem like I'm not fully up to steam yet, that's why. This is stuff hot off the press. We're all trying to dig in and learn, and part of the learning is doing, and so that's why I'm doing.
The stream of information only gets faster and faster.
That's hard to keep up, man.
Cool. Well, Britton, thanks so much for coming on. We've got 3 more of these to go. I've posted the dates on the website, so y'all come back, and we will be talking to you then.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Britton.